Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Raika Show. Today, we are in a new space. Welcome to our podcasting room. So, David finally interrupted one too many times. And we decided that we needed a dedicated room, and we should probably lock
the door
that door.
locked?
Yeah,
so
it
he
is.
can not continue that streak.
So over the next few episodes, you're going to see this room kind of start to take on some personality. Right now, it's pretty bland, but that's okay because we bring the party. Today, we are talking about a topic that is trending, and that's what we do. So right on in.
It's been trending for a while.
It's been trending for a while, and we're talking about why is Agile never Agile? So Agile is, and we're talking about Agile in terms of a software development approach, a software development process. So I'm going to start by, for those of you who don't know, you've been living under a rock for 20 years, defining what this means so that we have sort of a platform from which we discuss our opinions and views on this. So Wikipedia defines Agile software development as an approach to software development under which requirements and solutions evolve through the collaborative effort of self-organizing and cross-functional teams and their customers and end users. It advocates adaptive planning, evolutionary development, early delivery, and continual improvement, and it encourages rapid and flexible response to change. So the question, why is Agile never Agile, exists because all of that sounds really fantastic in terms of a software development project. Like, oh, we should be delivering code early and often, and we should be able to respond to changes from our end users or from our customers quickly and efficiently. And we're doing all this in code. We're not building a hardware product where we have to go get new boards or solder new components. You know, it's all in software. So we just change a few lines of code and we're off and running and able to adapt. The problem is it's almost never actually that way. We always end up back in a traditional waterfall method where you try and define as much scope as you possibly can up front and work off of that scope, and changes should be few and far between. The best analogy I can come up with for this is building a house. It's a little bit different because, like I just said, we're not building hardware. We're not, we don't have physical pieces. You know, we're not waiting for a manufacturing process, and that, you know, interrupting that process means that we add all this time and energy. But where it is the same, particularly in terms of legacy software, but also in new software, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And that's why I think Agile was originally born and conceived, was because, well, let's stop trying to know what we don't know until we do know it, and then we'll respond to it when we do know it. The problem is, how do you ever work inside of a budget constraint or a timeline constraint or both of those things at the same time if you don't know the whole world of what you're building? How do you say, I'm going to build a house and I'm going to do it in 6 months for $500,000, but I don't know what it's going to look like yet? Don't know what your finishes are, right? So Agile's a fantastic idea. It's sort of been set as like boy, if it could go that way, everybody would be more satisfied with the process. But it almost never actually works out that way. And so we want to talk today a little bit about why is that?
In my experience, from what I've seen, one of the reasons is because not everybody in the stack, in the hierarchy of the company, has buy-in and or training. You know, I saw that fairly recently at a company where the owners, the founders of the company, the executive levels, they said, okay, you guys want to do Agile? I don't really understand that. That's fine. We'll pay for an Agile coach to come in, and they trained all of us. And the Agile coach said, okay, well, I need to train you guys too. Okay, that's fine. and it never happened.
Hmm.
And so consequently, Agile never really had buy-in from them. So the only people that were actually doing Agile were us, were the developers. Meanwhile, they're going, well, can't you just fit this other thing in? Can't you just add this requirement? Or this client said they would like this. Can you just throw that in? And we could never get them to understand that when you throw those things in at the last minute, that throws off all of your velocity, and not to mention none of those requirements were really ever thoroughly and clearly defined. So now we're building something in the middle of a sprint that we don't fully understand. So what you get at the end of that is probably some amalgamation of what the client actually wanted, but maybe not what they actually wanted.
So if this is a process that's designed to respond to change well, why is it that it doesn't respond to change well?
I think it would if the requirement that they are introducing, I mean, I think Agile can do that, especially Kanban style of Agile is designed. Kanban is designed so that you can pull things out and put things back in, in the middle of a sprint. But those things that you're putting in have to be very clearly defined, so that we can know we have a reasonable level of success at achieving this. Because it's clear, it's written right there. This story says, as a user, I want to be able to click on this button and this page opens up.
Yeah.
And if it's not clearly defined, then it's not going to be successful regardless, right? I mean, that's almost not even Agile's fault. That's just, that's just kind of dumb.
They respond to change, but it doesn't have to mean in this iteration.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a red herring.
And you have to decide, what are you pulling out? If we want to meet this deadline, you got to pull something out usually in order to fit this thing back in.
Yeah, I don't think it never works. I actually think it does work when you do it. I just think that almost nobody's doing it in reality. People have a tendency to get lost in a process of things, and as long as they're following the process, then they're doing a good job. And projects still fall apart because they're focused on the process. They're not focused on the software. And that's part of the Agile manifesto right up front is working software is the most important thing. And that's part of the problem is somebody feeling like, as long as I follow the process, then this will work out. And if it doesn't work out, it won't be my fault because I followed the process. That's part of the problem with just organizations in general is that, like, I can, if I'm working in an organization and some cloud service that we use is down, I don't usually get stressed about that, because I can turn around to somebody who I'm responsible to and say, it's out of my control. I'm gonna go get some coffee. But if you're really trying to get stuff done, then it's a whole different thing. When you're in business for yourself, like we are, then, when that cloud service is down, you're on fire still because it's like, I got to get this done and I can't go to somebody. And so that's, I guess, the main point there is not the difference about how you feel about it, but the fact that when you're in an organization, you can very easily say, hey, there's things out of my control that have delayed the outcome or delayed what I promised. So, but I followed all the processes, right?
Yeah.
If you go look at my points and my stories and everything's up to date. And, I told you in the stand up, and that's part of the problem. I mean, in my opinion, in my experience, most companies that were doing Agile, one of the things that they all made the mistake on, or the majority of them made the mistake on, was that their daily stand-up was a daily status, a daily accounting of my time from yesterday, a daily justification that I should still be here.
So what should a stand-up actually be?
It should address only the project.
Okay.
And it should be, okay, here's the things that I was supposed to do yesterday. Here's the 2 out of 3 that are done, so that it's all about handing things off, in my opinion. Because when we're working on a team on a project with various layers in the application, you're dependent upon somebody else in some other layer to get something done so you can get some data back and you can do what you need to do. And so you want that guy coming in the morning saying, okay, that thing where I was going to update the customer data with the new order is done now. Tested it. It's checked in. Cool. Now I know I can hit the task where I wanted to call that service to get the new customer data. And then also the obstacle side, where that third thing that I didn't get done, here's why. I found out, what we thought we were going to, I was going to do yesterday, what we talked about real quick. I found out that, oh, shoot, okay. Because this guy who's waiting for something needs to know right away that he's not going to get that today. So he can go work on something else that isn't dependent on that. It's all about getting the ball down the field. And people know this. I mean, they talk about this, but then when they get into practice, in my opinion, it just becomes this. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in a stand-up you heard somebody start out with, well, I talked to so-and-so yesterday. Or I had a conversation about something important with so-and-so yesterday. Nobody cares about you had a conversation unless you come back with saying, he told me that we won't be able to use XYZ to do this because of that. So we're going to have to rethink that. But if it's just, I talked, just the preliminary stages of feeling out some coordinated effort with somebody, you're just trying to explain how you used your time.
Right.
And that is totally irrelevant in Agile. Nobody in that room should be able to fire you or, send any punishment your way. So we're all trying to get the ball down the field at this point.
Yeah. So does this go back to Agile would be much more effective if we were a culture of accountability versus a culture of authority that is based on pretty much the only authority mechanisms that any of us are familiar with, which is like parents, teachers, that kind of thing.
You're talking about carrot versus stick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about hierarchy versus accountability. I mean, if you have a team that works in an environment where they're confident that anything they contribute is considered valuable, does this process work better? Like, could you actually get to a place where you are actually doing it the Agile way better than the corporate hierarchy of I report to a middle manager who reports to and blah, blah, blah.
I think
like
very,
that.
very much. I mean, I have been on at least one successful Agile project where it felt like the Agile was a big part of the success. But it was a case where we didn't use any specialized software tools. It was the very first project that we had done with Agile, and we were using sticky notes on a whiteboard with columns drawn. And the product owner would step, and we had a war room. We actually had a project room that was dedicated with 2 or 3 developers, 2 QA people, and we had everybody who was involved in this product. We're usually in the same room all day, and the product owner would usually step into the room half dozen times a day and ask how things were going and if there was anything holding things up. And you do that appeal to the king thing at that point sometimes. So, well, I've been working on this task this morning, but this is looking like it's going to be a lot harder to do what I thought was going to be kind of easy to do. But I realize that we can do this much, and I can definitely get that done by Friday, or I can definitely get that done today. Is that cool with you for now if we make a story for the rest of it for later? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And that back and forth, being able to do that in a timely manner, and
also having one king. He's the guy who is making those decisions and can manage up the chain or cross departmental, whatever that looks like. He's the guy who can make that decision. And he's the
like
one
what
involved.
You said about the accountability and the leadership there is that shows when you have a scenario like that and you feel that, hey, the product owner here, he's in freaking charge of what I do for the next X months. I have a couple things I got to report to my manager on, timekeeping, stuff like that. But other than that, I am responsible to this product owner. And in that successful project, that feeling was there because the direct management for software wasn't that involved, and they were kind of happy to have, I think, somebody else taking over a portion of the team and directing them. And it's that feeling given to you that says this is a legitimate process. The company buys into this.
Yeah.
Like what Daryl had said about a company where up to a point it's Agile. Beyond that, they can throw anything into the mix that they want to, and we can't say no. But when you're working on a project where the product owner is the authority, and it keeps getting reinforced that he is the authority,
Yeah.
you're saying this is going to work because look, everybody's into it.
Yeah.
And that transparency of having sticky notes on the wall
Yeah.
versus sometimes I think the tools give you more and more layers by which you can hide, the lack of progress of things. You can hide them in these, look, all these great numbers we got. People get lost in the Agile of, like, how many points is that? How many points is that? It's all about points.
I was just going to say that.
We really should be having some engineering discussions. Of course, people know that you don't want to get bogged down too far in that. I think it's a gray, fuzzy line. But when we first started Agile, when it was successful, when we had our iteration plans, there was engineering discussions. If I'm responsible for a certain part, and I throw out a couple things to the group of, I think I can do that by this, that, and the other, and somebody else can throw out, oh, we have this thing that does that you can use, and other people will throw out some institutional knowledge that I can pile into there. But over time, it turned into just how many points is that? How many points is that? How many points is that? Should that go in the parking lot? It's all about process, and nobody's talking about what we're actually doing anymore.
So again, it's getting to people are creatures of habit, and we're creatures of goals and measurable, right? And what you're saying is there's the actual Agile process, which involves seeing value in the thinking process and finding value in discovering what we don't know. But you can't put time or dollar value on that. You can't distill that down to points.
Those points are an estimation, right? It's what the group has come together and said, we think it's going to take this long. We think it's going to take these points, which I know for a lot of Agile processes, the points don't correlate to anything. It's just it's a sort of a general estimate of the complexity, the level of effort, and the time, and all of that together. That's how much it's going to take. 3 points, 5 points, whatever, however you measure it, to achieve this thing. But nobody really knows.
Yeah.
Like you said, you don't know until you've actually done it.
So the problem actually comes in when we say, all right, we're going to go with 5 points. That feels about right. And then you get into the process and you go, oh my gosh, we were way off. This was an epic. Like, we couldn't even point this. This was epic. We didn't know what we didn't know.
There was way more to this.
And
than
now there's rather than that just being we have more information, so we're going to get better at estimating and working this project, now it becomes a stick by which to beat the whole team with and say, well, you didn't meet your mark.
Yep.
You were bad. Bad Grant. Bad Daryl.
Yeah, metrics are, gosh, it's funny because, I got into metrics, in the previous century thinking that it was a good thing. And then I started seeing how hard it was to measure the important things, to quantify the important things. And, when people get lost in metrics, they don't even know what they're measuring for.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And like you're saying, and like I was saying about the points, it's just people get fixated on these velocities and things like that. And there's outliers, and, well, how come your velocity went from 23 to 10? Did you lose somebody on your team?
No, we found something we didn't know how to point.
We ran into something that turned out to be a lot bigger than we thought it was going to be. But we got through it. We made it.
Yeah.
But you only got 10 points done.
Who cares?
Actually, I had that happen at a place where my particular thing I was working on was a role-based security model for the entire system, and my manager berated me about how few points I had or how few stories or something like that. It was how little. And it's like, this is something this company's been talking about since before I got here 3 or 4 years ago and has never been able to implement. And I'm getting there, but this is some hard stuff.
Yeah.
And to be, like you said, to be berating me or to be beating me with it, it's like, okay, I could have done a better job in the meeting to tell you that this was going to be a lot bigger than it is.
Yeah.
But kind of everybody kind of knew it was a big thing.
Yeah.
And to you to be throwing that out because we're arguing about something right now is just like, screw you.
Yeah.
Was this the same person that got onto you guys for not having enough lines of code? Okay.
No. Not the exact
same. It sounds like
person,
something you would have done.
It's that same group.
Yeah. But
What's funny is as you started talking about metrics and you know how do you really get value from what you're tracking. Points is definitely an area where it's like we're throwing darts at the wall a lot of times, and until we're done, we don't really know what we can get done. It reminds me of an episode of Friends where Chandler's in the meeting with his boss, and when it opens the scene, the boss is like, "So in summary, the lines all go up, so I'm happy. Let's go for martinis." And it's like, what are you measuring though?
Right.
I mean, if the lines going up are expenses, that's bad.
That's bad, yeah.
But nobody really knows, and we're all looking for that. Yep, it's trending up, so that's the right thing. And it's like, no, that's not
And
necessarily
what's funny is
the
in that
thing.
same company, upper management didn't have to follow that kind of thinking because there was an engineering retreat that happened out of state with a bunch of muckety mucks. And I said, "Did you have any engineering people there?" "No." "It's an engineering retreat. That might have been a good idea to have some engineering people there." But they came back with a new company strategy. You know, there was going to be more cross-team activity. And we were going to be, because we had been acquired by a large company, we were going to be working with teams all over. And that was like, the goal was just to have more teams working on stuff. And it's like, what's the outcome going to be? And I finally asked the VP of engineering. He was the only engineer, the VP of engineering, who wasn't really much of an engineer. But I said, you know, so if you're going to implement this strategy for the next year, how did you guys determine if it was effective at the end of the year? If you made more money measuring things like that's kind of hard. And I just became livid. I said, we live and die by points and by velocities that we're living and dying by every single day. And you are the people that are making us do this. And then you don't even know how you're going to measure what you're doing. So to me, it's like you threw darts at a board and said, let's try something different. We won't even know if it worked or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds like they wouldn't have known for at least a year.
Well, and
If, whatever it was.
And how would you know?
You minions who didn't get a say have to be held accountable to this arbitrary system that we came up with and we imposed on you. Don't you dare ask us to be accountable for anything.
It was like he didn't even think of it.
No, didn't even occur. And how ironic is that? They're like, we want more cross team collaboration. Oh, but we're not inviting the teams to talk about that.
Anyway, this is becoming a rant of organization. And that's really what this is an organizational problem in a lot of cases.
It is. And so what we're coming to is that Agile could be very, very effective.
And it was. And for you guys in that one scenario.
But what it takes to be effective is that it's an organizational mindset and a cultural mindset.
Yes.
It can't be a process that's dictated. It has to be a culture and a mindset.
And it's not static. I mean, I feel that you have to constantly be refining, almost to the degree of after every sprint going, okay, what worked? What didn't?
Yeah.
What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to start doing? Every single time.
Even in terms of process, like, okay, the process, we've gotten encumbered by this step that we've said we need to do. Okay, well, let's just stop doing that step and see if there's some other thing that we can replace it with. We don't know what that is right now, but
let's experiment.
Just try it.
Let's try this, and then next time we'll try that.
And that's the part that gets scary for companies is you can't reproduce an experiment. You can't depend on an experiment to produce money, right? To produce revenue.
That's where culture comes in, because what I've found is that most of those retrospective type sessions, people are afraid to say, that didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, this thing that I'm hearing everybody buys into, I think it was just stupid and pointless.
Yeah.
And it didn't do anything but cause me more work.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to say that because nobody else seems to be saying it.
Right.
And I think that's what happens is there's the culture of, I don't want to stick my head out and get whack-a-mole. So it's like the emperor has no clothes story, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody's afraid to say, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any parting thoughts?
Party thoughts.
Party thoughts. Let's party. Let's have a tea party.
Anyway, we're done.
All right. So why is Agile never Agile? Mostly because you can rarely get buy-in from a cultural perspective on what it really means. So if you have an example of in your organization how you've successfully implemented pieces of this or gotten organizational buy-in, we'd love to hear about it. Comment on our website, comment on our social media. Tell us we're wrong. We love that. All right, for Daryl, Grant, and Cynthia, this has been Raika Technologies and the Raika Show, and we shall see y'all next time.